All right, welcome to the Jump Seat. This is episode number 7 this week. We've got some important guests we're going to be hearing from, talking water flow here in a minute, but just wanted to let you guys know, for those who haven't joined the Jump Seat, it's a weekly spotlight bringing you key industry thought leaders, subject matter experts, and next-gen insights affecting both you and your department. Hosted by two Jump Seat firemen, myself and David Durstein, with the occasional look behind the scenes at 200 plus years of fire service tradition, design, and manufacturing of today's products. So, Dave, here we are again. I wanted to say thanks for coming in, and how are you, man?
I'm great, man. It's been fun. 7 weeks. Who would have thought, right? So we kind of did this on a whim, and we want to thank all of our listeners out there for joining us, and those viewers watching us on a regular basis. So it's been a lot of fun for us to put together the show, and I think we got another great one today. Um, you know,
Indeed.
I actually I read an article here this week, and I actually pulled a couple key pieces out of it, John. I think it's actually kind of a fun one. So, and it really relates to what we do here in the Jump Seat. I kind of take it a little bit more of the personal side. So this is an article written by Larissa Conroy. She's a firefighter medic out of Orlando, Florida. And, this is actually one where she took a look at research around turnout gears and what's actually causing cancer in firefighters. And so she wrote an article first. She came back and wrote a second article, and she said something there that really stood out. That was a quote. I'm actually going to read it right here from it. And she said, "You accepted the risk of the job when you signed up for it. If you can't take that, then leave." She says, "I have a huge problem with this statement. It is essentially telling me that I have accepted the risk of the job with no intentions of changing it or making it better should I have the opportunity. We come into the fire service and we are told from day one, leave it better than you found it." I think that last statement is actually the great piece in this puzzle. And I wanted to just kind of share it because, whether you read the whole article or read her articles, but that little key piece that, there's so many advancements in technology and in modern day science. There's so much information available to all of us as firefighters, as industry professionals, that
Right.
I think we should think about that old adage, 100 years of progress impeded by tradition. And she really threw that out to me when I was reading it. And I know I look at the Jump Seat as an opportunity for John, you, and myself to bring knowledge, technology, changes to the fire service. And I think our goal ultimately is, how can we make it better for ourselves, kind of selfishly,
Right.
but then also for all those who follow us, those listen, and firefighters around the world. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, the other thing too is just, there's seasons as a firefighter. I'm sure you can relate. I can relate. Others can relate. There's times where you have that passion, that fire's burning so clean. It's just, something happens and something good happens. You've got that refuel, which is awesome. That keeps us going. It's a recharge to our passion. And there's times where you go through seasons and you start to wonder, you worry, or you doubt, or something happens and it changes how you think about things. And it is a bold oath that we all take. And rain or shine, feast or famine, like the last few weeks, there's been a lot of just negative in public safety in general. And now it's one of those times you got to stick to your roots. And why are we doing this? Because we all know why, but we got to remind ourselves when it gets tough sometimes. So yeah, good little article though. I appreciate you bringing that up. So any other
Yeah.
thoughts on that before we jump into the next piece?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I hope our readers and our followers and our listeners here on a weekly basis can kind of take that same adage, right? Think
Yeah.
about why you do what you do in the fire service, and can you make it better for the next round of firefighters? I know, so that's a challenge. I'm going to throw that out to all of our followers. Hey, how can you make it better for the next generation of firefighters? How can you make it safer? I think I think we're going to cover some stuff next week that talks about fire prevention and stuff we've done. historically that have helped. So I'll give you a little
Yeah.
segue into next week, because I know what we're going to be covering, and I think that's one of those big challenges. How can you make it better? And before we jump into our live guest here, I just one other thing. This is actually a couple weeks ago we touched on this big fire and explosion that happened out in Los Angeles, and another situation happened last evening in Jacksonville, Florida. They're actually great customers of ours at IDEX, and particularly with the Akron brass side of things, and they were battling a container ship fire with, I believe it was something like 2,500 scrapped cars on this, and it was a 15-level container ship. And anyway, they had a fire and explosion. I know, I believe when I last saw it last night, there was 8 firefighters that were injured, some pretty severely. So I just want to throw out, hey, we're thinking of those guys in Jacksonville. To all the brother firefighters around the country, we're thinking of all of you, but those folks in Jacksonville that were injured last night, rest up, get yourselves better, get back on the job. We're thinking of you, and God bless you all. So I just want to tip my hats to those guys and hope they're all on the mend well. So.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Well, here we are, number 7. We're going to bring our guest in here in a minute, but before we do that, I just wanted to do a little bio here and read a little bit about him. So we're going to be bringing in Jeff here today in the Jumpseat, and for those who want to learn a little about water flow and optimizing our pump delivery system and how, or sorry, not ours, but theirs, how to optimize how we spec trucks, how to avoid some of the common things, tune in, turn it up, because this is going to be good for you and your department. So Jeff, he is currently a product manager for vehicle-mounted pumps on our team, and Jeff is a United States Army veteran. He brings about 15 years of experience in design, engineering, and product management to our team at Hale Products. Jeff lives in Ocala, Florida, and he has agreed to come and shine some light today, like I said, in the area of pump optimization. So without further ado, Jeff, welcome to the Jumpseat, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Jeff, glad to have you. I know it's, we've got a lot of our followers that are Hale users. And so I know you're going to give us a little insight into some of the Hale product side, but probably not so much on the Hale side, but more generalistic to pumps and how we can actually make full use of our pumping systems and solutions. So, one of the things that comes to my mind is, what do you think people should know when they're specifying a pump? What are those things that, fire departments miss on a regular basis?
So really the first thing that they need to look at is history. So they need to look at how they've used pumps in the past. Have they had large fires? Are they using foam? Look from the maintenance side. Are they damaging pumps in a certain way that they can change how they order the pumps? So you look at that historical, not only from, the people actually fighting fire, but from the maintenance team to kind of help hone what you need to move into. One of the biggest things I see people doing is trying to do double duty now. So they want pump and roll, but they also want structural firefighting. One of the issues I see with this is there's no really great pump that does both. So generally what I would advise in situations like that is choose a smaller PTO pump that's actually made for that pump and roll, and then choose a larger, manifolded midship pump that's great for structural firefighting and will give you those flows. What that allows you to do is that actually allows you to pump and roll instead of more of what they call pump and move, or, pumping while you're driving a little too fast. It really makes the vehicle better. And in a lot of cases, you can put 2 pumps and have one manifold system. And so that one manifold system can be fed by both pumps. So in that case, if you're using a foam system, you only need one foam system for both pumps. So it really tailors the apparatus for what you're using it for.
Jeff, it brings up a really interesting point there. And I didn't think of it in that manner before, but we have several customers. One that comes to my mind is LA County that does that exact same thing today, right? So they put a smaller PTO driven pump really for that pump and roll wildland applications. but yet still have one of our QMAX pumps, midship pumps for those larger flow firefighting structural applications. And I know, they've got a wide range of diversity in their capabilities by doing so.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things you can do is it doesn't necessarily have to be a PTO pump. So we have other customers that are using small portable pumps, which even gives you better performance. You can pretty much be stopped and still be pumping whatever the flow rate you need it to be. So yeah, it is a really unique situation in California where, in one mile you're at a structure and another mile you're, in the scrub brush. So you need to have that double duty apparatus.
It's good.
One of those other things too that kind of come to mind. You've seen a lot of people moving away from pressure governors and back to the old ways of what I would have called the relief valves, or are relief valves like a thing of the past completely now?
Really, when you look at it, we see a complete decrease in the use of relief valves. So we see people moving to more of governors, and it's kind of the sign of the times. Like everyone's used to joysticks and their Nintendos and their PlayStations, and push button operation and letting it work. But I do see relief valves put in combination with governors, and that's usually something I ask, why they're doing it. There are some situations where it makes sense, using a pressure governor to relieve water pressure if you have really hot hydrants. In other cases, people are using it as a backup. So they're like, well, if my electronics in my truck go wrong, I can still pump. But really, the misnomer there is if the electronics in your truck don't work, the truck is not going to work because pretty much everything on the truck is electronic. And one of the other issues I see is if your operators really aren't trained thoroughly for a pressure relief system, they may not, use it on a daily basis. And since it uses a spring to compress, and that's how you're maintaining your pressure, if you don't exercise it daily, what ends up happening is you can't turn it when you need it. So in effect, your backup is no longer a backup. It's just a paperweight.
Jeff, too, while we're talking about it, trend-wise, we talked just a minute ago about some of the common practices kind of with this. People, they're going for redundancy, but they just need to be mindful of some of the other effects because, again, we've trusted electronics for a long time, right? From the brake pedal, the gas pedal, back, and it's unfortunate if somebody doesn't know those things and in an event, their intentions are right to have redundancy, but it actually adds confusion. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's super helpful to have.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen everything from switches on the panel to go back and forth, which, anytime that you can get stuff off the pump panel to make it simpler to operate, I'm all in on making that move. So adding the complexity doesn't really make sense to me.
Are there any other industry trends that you've noticed more and more, more recent, I say recent, maybe the past few years that you didn't see previously at your level?
We see a trend for non-traditional pump panels. So, we're seeing the, pump in one location, maybe the pump panels in another location. So really, I think what this is effect of is these apparatus are doing double duty. So you have, an apparatus that is meant as a pumper, but it's also meant as a rescue. It's also meant as EMT. So trying to stuff everything in there, they're looking for every little space they can for compartment space. Some of the issues that I've seen with that is sometimes that means that access is limited on some things. So one of the things I like to remind people when they're specifying a truck or speccing it is, to make sure there's access. So NFPA only requires you to have an 18 by 18 inch opening. Where that opening is, it doesn't matter. It might be a tunnel to get in there, and you have to really think about the guys who are going to be working on it. So, not only the pump, but let's say, valves and the plumbing, they need to get in there and be able to maintain that equipment. And what you don't want to happen is, let's say you have to replace a valve seal. To get the valve seal out, you're emptying out the truck, you're getting in it. it's taking 2 days to replace a valve seal when really that's a 5-minute job. So it's just something to think about when you're speccing the truck.
Yeah, that's a great piece there. I mean, I think about how many times I've had to go and just climb around a pump panel or a module at times and be like, "Hey, John, hold my feet. I'm going down here," right? Because you just pack, 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound box,
Yep.
and they forget about that service aspect of things when they're really looking at the whole apparatus. How it's can I get everything in there, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we are trying to do a lot with this apparatus, but yeah, I've actually had to hold people's feet and shove them into the gauge compartment, the gauge side, and have them in there so that they can work on something. And let me tell you, the guy that's in there, that's not comfortable laying across control rods, foam systems, plumbing. He's not very happy.
And he better not be claustrophobic either.
Yeah, yeah, you better not be.
Or he's in the wrong place, wrong job.
Exactly.
But that is a good consideration too. Your fleet personnel, making sure they can do what they would need to do and get in there to do the right things. And I'd been a fireman for over 10 years before I'd ever had to crawl behind a pump house, and I can say I now have an appreciation for why we build things right the first time, and some of these things you're talking about to be considerate or take into consideration when you're speccing trucks, and that's ease of maintenance, access.
Yeah.
Getting in there so you're not miserable having to do some minor preventative task, right?
Yeah, and it's because it really is about getting your truck back up and running. So you want the minimal time the truck is spent in service so that you get it back out there, because sometimes they're running a reserve. Some departments may not have that reserve to be there, and so you don't want take your frontline truck out and not have a truck to back it up. You want to back in as quickly as possible.
So, Jeff, I got to know. I mean, you've been doing this for a number of years. You make a whole bunch of different pumps at Hale. Which one's your favorite pump and why?
I'd have to say the QMax pump, and really why I like the QMax pump is it's the most tested pump I've tested. So I've done tests with that to see how much flow we could get through that. So, I can get over 3,000 GPM through a pump that's really only rated at 2250. And honestly, most of the time it's only rated at 1,500. But with 50 PSI inlet pressure, I can get 3,000 GPM out of that. I've also tested that pump against the competition. And everyone makes a great pump. But, when we look at how the QMax competes with other pumps, it has the highest vacuum attained. So what that means is I can pull water from a longer hose run. It has the lowest RPMs, which means it's running more efficient, and also it has the best port performance. And when I say best port performance, that's really what makes the pump stand apart. When you look at the QMax, it is a huge, solid cast iron piece that spans the frame rails, makes the truck stronger, and really anyone would have to work very, very hard to plumb a QMax poorly. So what that means to the firefighter is that they're going to get large flows out of every discharge on their pump. And I know you and I have worked with some customers where, they were looking for LDH discharges, where we can say, hey, you really don't need an LDH discharge to get the flow that you want. And so we prove that to them. And in that process, we're saving them money and, making their pump panel cleaner. So that's pretty much my favorite pump.
So I got one other question I got to throw out here, and I think when you look at, when I look at the industry, I see so many variations and changes. What is, like if I want to have the perfect pump, the perfect water flow system, where do I go get it? How do I get it? And is there any advice on what is actually happening in the industry to get that optimized system?
Well, I like that you asked that question. So honestly, I would find your nearest IDEX regional representative and I'd talk to them. So one of the benefits we have is we have
that guy John Martin's, right?
That guy John Martin's over there. We own all of the equipment that is attached to that. So we can tell you, hey, this works with this doesn't work with this. And so we're going to make sure that the total flow solutions is met for you.
So really packaging the whole piece together from an IDEX perspective, right?
Yeah, we're going to tell you things when you order your pump, like, hey, you should order a TRV, you should order anodes, and we have SAM solution, which puts all of that stuff together and really makes your apparatus operate even smoother.
I think this is a little salesy here from that standpoint, and it was kind of maybe even a baited question, but I do want to just echo that. I think the whole IDEX fire and safety team, whether it be Akron Brass Products, Hale Products, they're here to support that total flow solutions, and really they're the experts on it. So get a hold of guys like John, right, that are out in the field.
Call me.
We got a whole bunch of them because they really are great resources. And then we got great guys like Jeff right here doing his thing to give you the best products possible in the industry, particularly in the pump space. So I'm throwing that out there. Sorry, we try not to get really salesy here, but this is one of those things that we really do differentiate from the rest of the world. But so I wanted to make sure we touched on that. And thank you, Jeff, for that. Jeff, anything else that you want to bring to us that you would say, hey, Dave, if I was going out to spec a truck today, you got to look at these two things, or you make sure you don't forget about X. What would those be?
I'm gonna go back to the history. So look at the history of your pump. Really look at all the pumps that are out there. Make sure if you want a 1500 GPM pump, buy a pump with a little more reserve in there, because in the end, that's going to save you maintenance costs that you're not going to have to rebuild that pump sooner. So if you do get that 1500 GPM pump, you're at the edge of the edge of that pump's performance. So it doesn't really give you that reserve. So what I would say in everything is make sure you have reserve built into your apparatus.
Perfect.
That's good. Thanks, Jeff.
Well, Jeff, thank you for so much for coming out and joining us on the jump seat here today. Hopefully our listeners got a little bit of something out of it. I know I did. Hey, look at history, right? Yep. Figure out what I need from performance, and then call John.
That's right.
Call John.
And then I call Jeff when I need to.
Exactly. There you go.
Awesome.
But, Jeff, thank you very much. Appreciate you being on here today, and hopefully we provide a little bit more insight to folks out there.
Again, thanks for having me. Have a great weekend.
Yep, you bet. I was just going to touch on next week. Next week will be number 8, and Dave, we talked about it, but it's like, how are we at number 8? It feels like we just started this, but we are at number 8 coming next week, and it's going to be another good one. We're going to be bringing in a personal friend of mine and just a phenomenal Midwest, somebody really making we talked earlier about making a move in the fire service and leaving it better. The person that I'm going to be bringing in is doing exactly that. His name is Dave Woodward. He's going to be talking about kind of maximizing today's fire training and tactics. He's also a training officer at Lake Ozark Fire in Lake Ozark, Missouri, and we're also going to be spotlighting the revolutionary fire tactics at the Lake Conference, and that's part of what he's been doing over the last couple of years to, as I said, bring fire training and make the fire service better. So tune in next week, everybody. It's going to be good as well.
Hey, thank you very much, everybody. You know how to find us, right? Check us out on the IDEX Fire and Safety Facebook page. You can always watch previous episodes here. You can also find us on our webpage. It's actually idexfiresafety.com/the-jumpseat. And there you can find all our past episodes as well as bios on John and myself. And we look forward to having you all with us here next week. And like I said at the beginning here, we're hoping to share a little light on what's going on in the world and in the fire service. And the ultimate goal is, how can we make it better than we found it and when we joined the fire service ourselves? So thank you all very, very much. Glad you're able to be with us. And we'll catch you next week.
Have a safe weekend, everybody. Thank you very much.